We have three world-class SEO influencers in today's panel. Number one is Lily Ray. Lily is well known for her work in the SEO space on topics related to EEAT, analyzing Google's algorithm updates, Google Discover, and more. Lily currently serves as the VP of SEO Strategy and Research at AMSIV, which is formerly Path Interactive. Next up, we have Kevin Indig. Kevin is an advisor to some of the world's fastest growing startups and has defined organic growth strategies for companies like Ramp, Bounce, Hims, Nextdoor, and Snapchat. Once a week, he sends the growth memo with organic growth strategies and case studies to more than 11,000 subscribers and regularly speaks at conferences around the world. Last up, we have Cyrus, who owns Zippy SEO, an online marketing consultancy based near the forests of the Oregon coast. He writes extensively about Google's algorithms and constantly publishes new studies and experiments. Cyrus shares insights across his social media channels and through his SEO tips newsletters. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to kick us off with a question that you've been all getting, which is regarding AI overviews. I'm going to ask, how do you think you get cited in an AI overview? And I'll pass the mic first to Kevin.
Sure. So I've played around with this quite a bit, and I don't think I have the full picture yet. But one thing that's interesting is when you analyze n-grams, specifically 3 grams and 4 grams, um, when you compare those between the AI overview and the linked resources or the cited pages, there oftentimes is a high overlap in just the frequency of trigrams or 3 grams and 4 grams. Bigrams don't make a ton of sense in most of these questions because they're a bit more complex most of the time. So not sure about like longer grams, 5 grams, 6 grams, but that's something that I've already observed on a bunch of queries. And so I think it goes back to a lot of times one of the first checks that AI overviews will make is the actual kind of main entity or main keyword, so to say, represented in the keyword in the content. And a lot of times I've seen that it just I'm not sure how much weighting goes into that, but a lot of times it seems to just be represented a lot of times on the page. So I don't want to say keyword stuff your content to be present in AI overviews, but there is that pure relevance aspect of are you writing about the topic that this question is about or not? Um, the other thing is that I've seen a wild mix of AI overviews pulling results from either, sorry, pulling content from either the top results or sometimes not the top results at all. And I haven't yet found out when Google makes that decision. And then the last point I want to make is that I've been pretty blown away by how AI overviews pull content out of videos. And so I've seen videos being cited on a regular basis from YouTube, and every time AI overviews actually do a pretty good job, I have to say, in synthesizing content not from the description or even the timestamps, but actually from the transcript of the YouTube video. So you'll literally see that they can pick up the transcript and they can reformat and resynthesize the content that they find in the transcript. So I'll stop there for a moment because I can probably go on and on, but those are already some interesting observations that I could make that don't apply, for example, to featured snippets.
Cyrus, any thoughts?
Yeah, so that really interesting about video. Great question. I was just reading the what is widely shared as the Google patent around SGE, and in there they talk about how they generate the answer from all these results, and then when they pick the links, at least according to this patent, when they pick the links, they are picking sources that match the answer that they generated, which is there's sort of a chicken and an egg thing going on. But in theory, you can be picked to appear, even if they didn't use you as a source, if you're closely matching the words they use in the answer. That, in theory, I have no proof of this. If you want to look at that patent yourself, it's called Generative Summaries for Search Results. But it seems like there's multiple processes going on. I think we're gonna see somebody like you or somebody in the near future come up with a SGE ranking factor study in the very near future. We may have already seen something like that. But I think my takeaway is it's totally possible. There are multiple methods of ranking and getting in that SERP snippet, even if Google is not using you as a source. Interested to hear what Lily has to say on this.
Yeah, those are all excellent points. I've been starting to dig into this a bit more. I was, obviously looking at SGE, what was previously SGE for a very long time, and all of its bells and whistles. But what made it really difficult up until this point is that it was just changing so much every day, and the way that Google was showing it or not showing it, it was just hard to predict what was going to happen. So I kind of wanted to wait until it was live to start drawing conclusions about how to get in there. So working on that now. There's an amazing new tool by Tomek Rudsky from Onely called ZipTie. Just started playing with that yesterday. This tool allows you to put a batch of keywords into the tool and see literally whether or not an AI overview is triggered. What's the content in the AI overview? Who are the sources? What types of features are included in the AI overview? Who are your competitors? Like everything you would possibly want to know, they've built that tool, which is just amazing. So I'm really looking forward to kind of doing a lot of analysis using that tool and seeing what I can find. But some other interesting stats. Yesterday, same company, Bartos, he shared that 80% of the results that they found in the e-commerce space that were ranking in AI overviews were not ranking organically. 80%, which I thought was mind-boggling. So, when Sundar Pichai said that this sends more traffic to more websites or whatever, maybe that's what he meant. Maybe there's a lot more sites that are theoretically eligible for AI overviews that weren't necessarily ranking as prominently and getting traffic before. But Kevin, you mentioned keyword stuffing. I mean, it's wild to me some of the things I've seen this week because there's so many sites ranking in AI overviews that don't rank organically, you'll get AI spam, keyword stuffed content, actual spam showing up in there. Usually not for sensitive keywords, but I'm very surprised by the seeming like lack of quality checks that sometimes is happening, or the lack of just like QA to make sure that these are trusted results that are showing up in there. So maybe that'll improve over time. We'll see.
Brings us to a slew of questions that we're already getting. I'll start with the easy one. Ben asks, what other tools do you know of to track SGE? Sender's been pretty quiet about Google Search Console graduating into, I guess AI overviews other than ZipTie. Any performance tracking tools that y'all have seen?
I'll just share one thing because this came up yesterday and I didn't fully understand until yesterday. AI overviews only show for logged in Google users who have incognito turned off. That's in Google's actual documentation. Most SEO rank tracking tools are tracking results from logged out Google users using incognito. So a lot of the SEO rank tracking tools that you would expect to put something together to start reporting on this literally can't right now unless they're reporting on logged in results. So that's a new challenge for the SEO space. It's going to make it really hard to track this thing as it currently stands.
Yep, I'm with you. I think the only thing you can do is to track clickstream data. So is there anything you can record from browser activity? And the other thing is that I compared a lot of the AI overviews in SGE with the ones that you see out in the wild, and it seemed to be congruent right now. They seem to be the same thing right now, which is great. So that means, and I think that's what ZipTie does. I don't know this for a fact, but I think they're actually scraping SGE results. And so as long as those two things stay the same, we might have a chance to figure out what appears in the AI overviews. But if Google improves the SGE AI overviews, that could mean that they become discongruent and then they're harder to track. So I agree with you, Lily. I think one criticism, a big criticism that I have about overviews is that Google just doesn't give us any chance to understand what's going on there. And I mentioned this off the record before. I think that is to their detriment. I think Google might actually get better content if they help understand at least a little bit of how to be more visible in these things. And if they then cannot parse out low quality, then that's on them. But I'm generally frustrated with how hard Google makes it to understand the impact of AI overviews.
I'll just add, I think up to this point, we've seen SGE, AI overviews, whatever we want to call them, change so frequently, which is another challenge. It seems like they're caching answers a lot more than they used to. But and especially with all the criticism we're seeing and bad press, and I think we're going to see that bad press wrap up a little bit, with a lot of the examples that Lily has been sharing on social media, pressure for them to change even more. And that makes tracking incredibly difficult. So even if you capture a snapshot, it's going to be completely different in a few weeks, which is another challenge. And I think a lot of what I'm hearing from my clients and people contacting me is this is barely on their radar. I think we live in a little bit of a bubble, big publishers too, but for 80% of websites out there, this is still just a blip, and they're not as concerned as maybe the people in this room and the people in this in our audience are today. So it's really an evolving situation.
Yeah, I think that brings us to an interesting follow-up question, right? On a scale of 0 to Goog enough, how satisfied are y'all with AI overviews? But more importantly, how satisfied do you think, the 99.9% of real world users who are not SEOs are satisfied with AI overviews? Cyrus,
I'll say
hand it to you.
5. I'll say 5. As a user, I sometimes appreciate them because they're doing what they're Googling for me, and it speeds up my research. Sometimes it's crap, and if you make 20 queries, you're easily going to find 2, 3, 7 that are just incorrect. And I think Google's got a real conundrum on their hand as they scale this out. And what we've seen in the past when they promise this big technology is we get something at Google I/O, there's a big announcement, and then it's the slowest rollout in the world. And we're going to be talking about this a year from now, but I don't know. Don't know.
Kevin, well, what do you think?
Yeah, I have to say, I've come across many. Look, I'm torn, okay? I've done a bit more research lately, over the last couple of days in AI overviews related to insurance, which is certainly a sensitive space. And I've noticed that when AI overviews show up, they actually have helpful information, to be completely honest. I think it's helpful. I think it's useful. I also know that there's a lot of, AI overviews with, as Lily mentioned, misinformation, harmful information, sheer out spam. And so what I'm wondering is, what is the denominator here? How many of these AI overviews actually have useful, correct information versus wrong information? That I have no grasp on. I think that's where we need to do more research. And obviously Google needs to fix this, right? Google needs to, the more of an answer they give in the search results, the more diligent they have to be about misinformation. It's easier when you have 10 links and you just need to rank them. It's much easier. But as soon as you give an answer, all of a sudden things become very sensitive. And you could tell how that can go wrong when you look at how Gemini created these images of historically completely incorrect facts that were kind of like extremely biased, right? So I think Google has to get on top of that. I also am generally hopeful because we're talking about neural nets and one of maybe 3 companies that have access to the largest data sets in the world. So I think if anybody can figure out, then it's probably Google. But I also think it's not realistic to expect that 100% of AI overviews will always deliver factually correct information. I think that's just the nature of web content and the nature of information in general. But again, that being said, I think they need to step it up in terms of quality. And I would love to see more research about how high is the percentage of AI overviews that actually contain misinformation and harmful information versus AI overviews that are actually useful. So to answer your other question, Bernard, I actually think that most people will find this useful. And I'm saying that because I've seen something very similar with Reddit, where there's obviously, some like sheer wrong and terrible content on Reddit and wrong answers that are sometimes pulled into AI overviews. But for the most part, whenever I talk to non-SEOs, they actually find these Reddit results quite useful.
Yeah, those are excellent points. And obviously I've been on a rampage sharing a lot of examples of where it goes wrong. And of course, those are not the majority of responses, right? It wouldn't be that interesting to share all the times it gets it right. It obviously gets it right a lot of the time. The issue that I have with it, number one, is that it gets things wrong that are your money or life a lot. And there's a lot of people that are sharing that, not just in the SEO space, but at this point outside of the SEO space a lot. And those, there's been many, many examples of that this week. What happens when the trust that people have in Google starts to erode, even if it's over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, or the trust that people have in these AI overviews is disintegrated because they've seen it recommend extremely dangerous, toxic treatments for medical conditions, things like this. So can Google redeem itself after a month of providing bad information in AI overviews? Like me personally, I don't know about you guys, but when I use the AI tools now, like ChatGPT or whatever, like I trust them less than I did in the beginning. Now that I have a better understanding, for example, if I put a giant spreadsheet into ChatGPT and say, do this thing for me, and it does the thing and it sends it back. And then I learn 2 weeks later that it left something really important out for my spreadsheet, right? And now I'm like, I don't really trust this thing as much as I used to. So if the trust in Google starts to disintegrate over time, that's what I'm a bit more concerned about.
Yeah, and if I can jump in and add to Lily's point, I think we're going to see the public is mostly naive and not as sophisticated as AI. And I think in the next year or two, we're going to have a Google Maps, someone drives into a lake incident, AI overview edition, where somebody at home in Michigan, does a recipe wrong and they blow up their house. It's incredibly embarrassing to Google, and it's those big events that usually force Google's hand to take action. But I bet we see something like that. That's my prediction.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great themes and different directions that the audience has picked up on and wants to go from here. I think a question that continues to bubble up is, what's your perception on, the query types and query classes and query industries that you're observing in terms of AI overviews? It clearly has rolled out across some your money, your life, some this, some that. And how do you think that those industries are being picked by Google to display an AI overview? And how do you foresee, that to change or evolve in the future?
I'll jump in and say I don't know. It seems like Google seems like if there seems to be a controversy factor if it's highly controversial or there's not a lot of agreement or the AI overviews will just say, hey, I'm not touching that right now, but it will get better over time.
Yeah, and I think like category wise, I mean, I've been surprised by how many categories it shows for. It seems like, literally the first day when Google announced the thing last year at Google I/O, it said it's not going to show up for your money or life queries. That lasted like 24 hours. So it's definitely showing up for like, it's almost like it shows up more for your money or life queries in my experience. Like it shows up a lot for health, it shows up a lot for financial topics. But yeah, sky's the limit. It shows up for a lot of things, except news. Definitely is cautious with news and obviously adult content and certain things that are like kind of forbidden with Google. But when you'll say what just happened in New York 20 minutes ago, it's really careful to not show news at least for like several hours after it happens, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I a smart play of Google would have been to show AI overviews for topics that are not as harmful, right? Like celebrity gossip or like people and culture type of topics, right? Like, of course, they want to get it right. But if I were to launch an MVP that has such a strong stance on answers, I would probably launch it in spaces where it can do less damage. That is not the case, I agree. And my theory is that Google ties AI overviews very closely to the knowledge graph. And I assume that they just have more knowledge graph entities in YMYL spaces like health conditions, finance topics, etc. And I assume that these more like less tangible topics, like again, like celebrity gossip and that kind of stuff, music and whatnot, that are much more transient. I assume that there's just much less in Google's knowledge graph. That's a theory. I don't have the data for that, but same with the topic graph, right? So shopping graph, then on the other hand, is another vehicle. So I expect a lot more to show up in e-commerce, but I think this is the counterintuitive paradoxical point here is that Google's graphs are mostly structured around higher sensitive topics, and all the other stuff is so transient and ever changing that it's much harder there to show AI overviews. Again, we need more data to prove that point, but that's what I see from the announcement that they put out.
Yeah. And to that vein, let's talk about ads. At the end of the day, seems like Google is really concerned about its revenue, its ads, and how do you think Google ads are going to be injected into AI overviews? How is this going to kind of, cause the ecosystem to change? And on the flip side, like how can we as SEO content creators expect our traffic and click-through rates to change as a result of this cannibalization of real estate that Google is doing and trying to drive more ad revenue?
Yeah, I'll jump in. With when Google announced how they're incorporating ads into AI overviews, it reminded me of, have you ever seen, in South America, they were showing the original Star Wars on broadcast TV, and they couldn't break for commercials, so they just filmed some shots of people grabbing a beer, Obi-Wan Kenobi grabbing a beer and drinking it, and they just spliced those into the original films so they didn't have to break for a commercial. That's how I kind of feel about ads and AI overview. Like, oh, what's the best? Enjoy a delicious Coke with your AI answer. Google is an advertising company, and we're seeing the productization of that more and more as time goes by, and it has broader implications. What is the web these days? I think a lot of people are asking that. Do we have websites solely to serve Google's advertising engine? The answer is increasingly yes, a little bit more each year, but I don't know what's going to happen. But if you make that advertising engine happy, maybe you do well with Google. I don't know.
Yeah, it's I always laugh at the difference in go-to-market strategy between Meta and Alphabet. The Meta Zuckerberg playbook is typically, oh, let's first bring a product to market like Instagram Reels. Let's get to mass adoption and critical mass in general, and then we're going to monetize it. And Meta is basically like, oh, here's this new product, and a week from now we're going to show ads as well. So I'm not sure they're doing themselves a favor there, but on the other hand, this could be good news for advertisers, because if Google shows ads in AI overviews and around AI overviews, that means that there is more inventory for ads. And if there's more inventory for ads, that means CPCs should go down because there's just more inventory and there's less bidding on the same inventory, right? So I don't know if that's true. That we'll have to measure CPCs over time and advertisers spend, but that could be good news. And the other reasons could be good news for advertisers is because there's just a much better chance for Google to play more targeted ads in a AI overview, because you have so much more context about what users want, etc. For organic results, though, that could be a problem, because if Google, as they announced, if they show product shopping ads or product listing ads, better said, with big product thumbnails and reviews and all that kind of stuff, I don't think organic results are going to compete with that the same way. And so you can see already in regular organic results, in regular e-commerce results, when product listing ads show up, a lot more clicks go to the ads than organic results. And I would expect the same thing for AI overviews. So a lot depends on how they display the ads. And again, I think it's too early from my personal perspective. I mean, Google had a stunning Q1 with amazing, revenue growth over time. So they might play better or fare better if they would hold off of ads for now, but that does not seem to be the case. And so, yeah, very dependent on the topic, how they show and display ads. But again, in general, I think for advertisers, it's better news than for SEO.
Yeah,
All right.
not much. Just
Yeah.
one quick thing to add. Do you guys know if the new web filter takes away like ads? I mean, maybe it shows the old ads, but not SGE ads or AI overview ads. I don't know. I think it'll just be interesting to see, because so many people, even this week already, have been sharing that link to get to Google's web results directly, the new filter that they have to strip out SERP features and AI overviews, and I imagine AI ads. So it's interesting that that's an actual URL that can be tracked probably as a referrer for Google. So I think it'll be interesting for Google to see how many people start to just go directly to that link over time.
Yeah, let's jump into UGC. Some people, know these as Reddit, Quora, perhaps hidden gems. Do you all think the age of Reddit, Quora, Upwork community, I've seen all kinds of crazy forums populate here, is here to stay? Or is this an overtune on Google's end? Why do you think this has happened? And how should we as creators adjust? And no, it's not site abuse and parasite SEO, but yes, what are your thoughts here?
I can jump in because my intern and I wrote a whole article about this. And if you guys want to check it out, it's on the MSIP blog. We wrote about Reddit's growth. So there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of conspiracies for sure. Reddit and Google announced the partnership in February, but if you look at Reddit's growth trajectory from an SEO perspective, it started in about August or September of last year. And that closely ties to when Google said they're going to be doing more to launch hidden gems in search, which was part of the helpful content system tweaking that they did last year. And it's true, Google's even said it's not just Reddit, there's other forums that are seeing a big growth in visibility, which is true. Like we have just this week, Stack Exchange is skyrocketing. Quora has absolutely grown a lot as well. We have discussions in forums, which is that new panel where they actually directly show forum results. So the impact of all this has been like compounded just because there's so many different ways that Google's showing Reddit. And now they're showing some like new SERP feature where Reddit gets to be expanded in the organic results. So it's taking up even more space. So to your question, personally, I do think it's an overcorrection just because it's so unprecedented. Reddit's growth, it feels like just this exponential like bomb that went off that just won't stop. Like at some point, I'm expecting it to start going down. It hasn't gone down yet. It just keeps going up. And we're starting to hear people talk about it. We're starting to hear, for example, I've heard a lot of people say, I don't feel comfortable using Reddit. Reddit is not a website that I like to use as much as many people do. Not everybody does. And I hear your point earlier, Kevin. Like it's true, it's extremely helpful in some cases. Sometimes it gets things very right. But I don't think the answer is to just blast Reddit everywhere, all over every possible result.
Yeah, if I could jump in, I think I agree with Lily that I think it is an overtune, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. But if you listen to what Google said at Google I/O and what they said around the helpful content update last year and forums, forums and perspectives, they use the word perspectives a lot, and I think this is because with AI we realize that facts are commoditized now. Facts are just a commodity, and Google can put those facts and answers in AI overviews. So what are people? If facts are a commodity that anybody can have, which created a huge spam problem and quality problem with Google search results, what's left? And that is individual perspectives. And when we studied what won and lost the helpful content update, we found that sites that used personal pronouns, talked about their own experiences, were typically doing better than sites that didn't. I see that trend continuing. People rewarding perspectives, personal experience, personalities, brands, things like that, things that cannot be replicated by other sites. So I think that's going to continue. I don't know about forums though, because they definitely have a spam and quality problem.
Yep, I agree. I think this is a new user intent, essentially, where people want opinions from other people. And I think it's really cool when you want to buy a sneaker and you just want a human, most likely a human, right? It's not guaranteed on Reddit, but it's more likely than in other articles or so. You just want an opinion from another human about how did the sneaker fit, how long did it last, blah blah blah, worth the money, etc. I think that these types of forums are most likely to stay. I think Google has a lot of refinement work to do to better understand when it's actually a good answer, when it's not a good answer. But I also think that, to step back, a lot of the content on the open web is just not good. It's just not good anymore. And so I also have a feeling that Google has a bit of a content inventory issue, right? Like, where do they still find good content? And it's an opportunity for us to just create better content and stand out. But if if you look at it broadly, then there's just way too much commercialized average content that performs well in search. And so I think again, this is here to stay, and I see a lot of forums from other companies skyrocket, right? Lily mentioned a couple of examples. I also see, forums on Zapier, on HubSpot, on Shopify, all sorts of SaaS companies also increase. And so, yeah, there's a forum bonus right now. And I think it's a legit strategy to consider. It's obviously a huge thing to stand up. You don't just start a forum on the side, but if that's something in the realm of possibility for you as a company, and you had that on your roadmap for a longer time anyway, then right now might be a good time to consider that.
Totally. Yeah, I think there is a dearth of original, unique, and engaging content. And I think Google's and OpenAI are turning to, forums to try to tap them for their insights, which brings us to this question around Gemini and ChatGPT. We might call this LLMO, large language model organization. How do you see how search or content creators can influence the outputs of GPT and Gemini? And how will that influence AI overviews, in your opinion? What's going to matter more? Do you see factors like domain ranking or authority play a role? And what are your thoughts on optimizing for Gemini and large language models? Lily.
Yeah,
We're
it's
like, don't start with
interesting.
me.
I know. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot because listen, like I've talked about this a lot, but like using a very small example, a little microcosm of just like personal branding, right? For example, when my title changed at work recently, you know, ChatGPT, AI overviews, they were saying my old title. So obviously like went into the places where it mattered and had the title updated and then it showed the new title. So that's a version of, SEO, reputation management, link building, whatever that we've all been doing for a really long time. That's a kind of a benevolent example. Where it's going to get interesting and a bit scary is that this is a version of controlling the narrative, like controlling the conversation or influencing the conversation. So especially given that AI overviews and now ChatGPT is partnering with Reddit, like if these tools are citing places like Reddit as the source of truth about certain topics, it's not difficult. I mean, if you care enough to influence the conversation on certain topics, which is what we've already seen happen with elections and things of the past. So yeah, I absolutely think that SEO it's probably going to go in a darker direction than it already has because people are going to be trying to influence what people are saying, what LLMs are saying about people, places, and things, and that's a bit scary.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more complicated because, as Lily said, she changed her title and she just doesn't, like she said, she has to change it in multiple places. It's not just on LinkedIn because there's a consensus mechanism at work and the LLMs are working on multiple sources, spicy autocomplete. So it makes it, you have to update in multiple ways, in multiple places. So it's not as straightforward as it used to be when you could just claim the featured snippet and you got your information there. It's not easy.
Yep. You essentially want to be part of the training data of a lot of these LLMs. And so the broader your web footprint is, the more likely it is for you to be included. And of course, the reputational sources play a role, right? If you're cited by the New York Times, that probably matters a lot more as if you appear in some random Reddit thread. That being said, you also want to take into account that these kind of these LLM corpi or corpuses, whatever the plural in Latin is, they change over time, right? So you see OpenAI, for example, forging all these partnerships with big publishing houses. Most recently, I think it was News Corp for 250 million, and that gives them access to a whole new slew of data. So, and then YouTube, right? They're most likely have been using YouTube data to train their models, and so I think what the point I want to make here, which is challenging, is that these things change a lot over time, whereas the web corpus is not fixed by any means, but it grows much, much slower than these LLMs get access to new data streams. And so the way to get featured today in an LLM is not the same as tomorrow. And it will diverge more over time as these LLM developers forge new partnerships, exclusive partnerships, maybe, we don't know, exclusive or partnerships with content creators. And so I think what remains true today as in the future is probably just want to have a footprint across the web. We want to be known for something. We want people to associate you with something, which means you need to stand out and be differentiated and have something original to say. And so I would keep investing in, again, evangelizing your brand, first party data and first party research you want to publish on your blog, become a source of, truth and information for your audience, and aim to be known for something, right? I think that doesn't change with LMs.
And just like one thing to add, because this came up yesterday, and we've already talked about hopefully and most likely Google will get better with AI overviews over time, obviously. But something that really surprised me yesterday, because everyone's sending me examples of it going wrong, was somebody said how to make your pizza dough stickier, right? And it said use non-toxic glue, like that was part of the answer. The thing that really surprised me was that that was pulled from one Reddit thread from 11 years ago. So in theory, these tools are using some version of consensus and everything to get the answer. But when things like that happen, I'm like, it really shouldn't be that easy to influence the answer. Because if you're trying to get rid of the SEO problem, that's really not the right way to make it go away. People are going to be going crazy just trying to post all kinds of theories and things on Reddit and Quora. So hopefully they do more to look across various trusted sources to generate the answer.
Let's shift some gears and talk about the recent March core update. We've seen a lot of small publishers, some large publishers, get decimated by the March core. The helpful content update has been merged into how the core systems work. And have you seen the ability for sites to recover some amount of traffic? And if so, what are some common themes of sites that you've seen be decimated? And what are some signs of, you doing the EKG on some sites to get them, back to a little bit of revitalization? Cyrus.
Yes, okay. So the March core update to me looks like kind of an expansion of the themes Google introduced with the helpful content update, and they said they incorporated the helpful content update into the Google's core, and it seemed like a lot more companies, different types of companies, got hit in March, especially bigger publishers, traditional companies that are real businesses. And I'm not going to claim I know everything that's going on, but the data suggests one theme that a lot of these sites have in common is that they're very good, or even, may you say, aggressive with certain SEO techniques. They typically tend to be companies that are doing SEO very, very well. And I've only, out of hundreds and hundreds of sites that I've looked at, I can count partial recoveries where the line just almost kind of goes back up a little bit and then hovers around. I can probably count about 3 of those that I've seen actually verified, and generally those sites have engaged in some sort of de-optimization strategy, but there's no clear-cut answers, at least that I have yet. But I think recoveries are possible, but Google's shifting in an entirely different direction with these updates. People talk about bringing their traffic back. Google is, entire business models are being wiped out. I'm not sure there's a lot of coming back to the old way of doing things. So I think people have to start shifting their thinking, shifting their expectation. And I think for the SEO industry, we're going to have to start, when we start learning more about how these algorithms work, we're going to have a reckoning about what some of our SEO best practices and how aggressive we can be, and what good SEO actually looks like, because I think Google's taking a look at us really hard, and a lot of these algorithms are a response to that.
Yes, 100%. I think this is like one of the first times in my SEO career, at least, where I feel like it's not just the types like black hat SEO that's being hit by Google, which is what we've seen in the past. People that are spamming Google, Google creates big algorithm updates and penalties to go after those types of spam. Now, to your point, Cyrus, we're seeing so many sites that were doing SEO, but from my perspective, they were helping their really great content get found, and Google's going after that too. It's like, with product reviews, I was looking at this yesterday. There's all kinds of publisher websites. I mean, every publisher under the sun was doing product reviews in the last couple of years. That's not a big surprise, but Google has pushed out the ability for product review sites to rank for a lot of queries, including best X query, best product query. We're seeing Reddit and Amazon appear in #1 and #2 for tons of those queries now. They're pushing out some of the biggest players on the internet that were the gold standard for how to write product reviews. It's almost like Google's going after that whole category of content. And with the site reputation abuse, May 5th component of the updates, Google was much more aggressive than I expected, for sure. We're now seeing virtually every big publisher, with just a few exceptions, losing a ton of visibility in the last few weeks in a way that I've never seen before on Google.
Yeah, interesting priorities for making search better. But yeah, what fascinated me most about the core update in March is that it was, I think, the longest update with 45 days recorded. And most of the impact happened in May. So there seems to be this kind of carryover effect where, and Cyrus can probably talk a lot about how they train these algorithms and update these systems, but there seems to be this time when a new system is quote unquote rolled out into the live search ranking production. And then there seems to be a data gathering period, and then there seems to be an impact period. So I think, long story short, like I grew up in SEO when, you know, an update rolled out and you had like this the kind of the new search results the next day, and you could like analyze them very easily. And now everything just seems to blend in with each other. More systems are integrated into core, which means it makes it harder to say when a system affected a website. For example, what you've seen is that, you know, certain types of websites were unaffected for maybe the first 30 days of the March core update, but then the last 15 days caught them. Others got impacted right away. So it's a whole bucket, it's a whole kitchen sink of a bunch of things, which makes it so much harder to really understand what's going on. I don't know if that's intentional or not. My theory it is, but long story short, it's just very hard to make sense out of these things over time. And so what I think is helpful is to compare impact over several core updates. I think Google launches about 3 to 4, maybe 5 a year sometimes, at least if you look at the last 3 to 4 years. And you kind of want to look at, okay, how many, like when do we get impacted, what other sites got impacted, and almost try to detach yourself from when exactly the core update rolled out, because it's just not representative anymore for when your site got affected.
Yeah, I feel like there's a confluence of different factors that I hear all of you mentioning. You know, Google cannibalizing a set of queries for its own interests, and also Google dishing out penalizations, severe ones, for sites that look overly SEO'd. So what are some more tangible, practical recommendations on the side of, you know, how do you de-SEO your website? You know, what are some things that you find yourself suggesting to clients, suggesting to, you know, SEO creators out there in an environment where, you know, we've had a decade, 2 decades of, you know, kind of this following of best practices? How does the unraveling of that look in a more concrete sense?
I'll give one concrete answer, so because I don't want anybody to steal it. And I don't know the answer. These are great questions, and I think about this all the time because I work with so many clients who have been impacted by these updates. One thing I can tell the audience with no ambiguity at all is one specific type of content that has got killed in these updates are listicles. 17 best places to go here. You know, the 8 best, something with the word best and a number. Those posts are dead. Which no one's crying over these at all, but they're not ranking at all. So that's my only tip. Bye.
No, it's true. That's probably like the strongest correlation between the sites that were hit, especially for the helpful content update, and having those types of articles, and too many of those types of articles. That's probably the #1 strongest factor. So that's a great point. But I think, broadly speaking, you know, doing what you just mentioned, Cyrus, but then multiplying that thousands and thousands of times, and that being the whole point of your site, that's kind of, if you were to sum it up, that's what Google really was going after. That's like the farthest end of what Google's not looking for anymore. They're not looking for a whole site's purpose to be finding the highest volume keyword research opportunity and then using generative AI to create 10,000 articles at once. That's, of course, the most extreme example, but there's a whole spectrum of what that looks like where people might be a little bit more involved with human involvement and everything like this. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have sites who aren't doing any of that and are just real businesses, right? So they're selling products, they have a marketplace, they have a forum, they sell books, whatever it is. That's a more natural look and feel for a business. Now, people love to misconstrue when I talk about this and say, oh, I'm just going to add a shopping cart to my website and that'll fix everything. Not what I'm saying. But I do think that you'll see that the healthiest sites from an SEO perspective right now are the people that are just they're marketing a product and then they have the natural extensions of those products. They have an app, they have a community support forum, right? And that stuff performs extremely well for SEO. And I've seen in the last 2 weeks, the brands that are doing some version of that, big, well-known brands, their SEO is skyrocketing lately.
Yeah, that's really good points. Some more that I want to add is three things that I saw help somewhat with some of these core updates. I'm not saying I know the green path to recovery, but some things that I've noticed is that during core updates, a lot of times user intent changes for keywords. And sometimes that means that two pages that didn't cannibalize each other before the core update now cannibalize each other. I've seen that case many, many times where maybe you have an article which is like the guide to X and then what is X, and they both rank, and all of a sudden Google says, no, those cannibalize each other. There's many cases like that, right? So I think in terms of like de-optimization, you just want to take a very close look at which articles might be competing for the same keyword and potentially consolidate or make them like differentiate them more from each other. The other thing that I want to mention is that it seems like, of course, one of the big topics this year, and people will say since Bilsavsky wrote about it in 2020, is information gain. And so what I've noticed is that, if you're too average in what you can offer to people and there's nothing to differentiate your content, that's usually a recipe to get hit by the HCO update. So you want to understand, how can I get to parity with some of the top results for my type of site? And then what else can I offer that maybe nobody else has? What are some unique insights? And then lastly, I've also seen that, I don't know if this is de-optimization, but I've seen that a lot of quality of life improvements really make a difference. For example, do I have the top takeaways at the top of the article, right? Do I have a table of content? Do I make it easy for people to consume? I think Cyrus, you mentioned that a bunch of times in the presentations that I've seen, but this whole kind of user experience meta area or group of things to do, that seems to matter more as well.
100% agree. I think I just to add in, with generative AI overviews, the whole point of that from Google's perspective is to get people answers quicker in a more efficient manner. And I think publishers need to kind of mimic that philosophy and help their user as much as possible. One SEO strategy that I've used for years that I think, as Kevin mentioned, still works today, even more important than ever, is get the user the answer as fast as possible. Google doesn't want your answer at the bottom of a 2,000-word post. Put it at the top. People who are interested are going to stick around and they will read your content, but help people out as fast as possible. It's usually a winning SEO strategy.
I think we covered a great amount of ground in these 50 minutes, given all of this is so fresh, right? It literally just launched in full effect. AI overviews, that is. Obviously, Google's knee-jerk reactions with March Core and these crazy things, I think, are reverberations of the fact that Google is seeing a big existential threat in its future. And so all of it's unclear, it's uncertain, and I think that leads to really volatile times as us in the SEO space. But I like to keep an optimistic view, and I think that with great change comes great opportunity if you're open to thinking about things differently, evolving with the times. That said, we still have a whole set of questions that people have. Again, very, very confusing time in search. I want to turn this last 8 minutes into more of a rapid fire session. So I'm going to dole out the questions to the panelists as, I see their areas of expertise. And if you could just give, a quick answer on your thoughts, that would be perfect. First one is up from Miguel for Lily. what is the secret to getting into Google Discover? I've seen you post about it a lot, and what are your thoughts?
Whatever secrets there might have been have mostly been taken care of by Google. There's not really that many secrets anymore. Um, I would say like some of the best ways to get a nudge in there. I mean, Google just took away Publisher Center. That was something that we saw success with. So they're taking away a lot of the opportunities. But something going viral on social, especially Twitter, really is a big source of discovery for Google Discover. And getting your images and your titles and your topics right. And of course, being on a site with some history of getting Discover traffic is really important. It's very hard to just get a ton of traffic for a site that's never actually been picked up in there before.
Great. Next up, we have this question that, let me see, where was it? Where'd it go? Let me see here. All right. What type of models do you envision with regards to Google AI overviews, Google Knowledge, and topic graphs and keywords? I'm specifically thinking in terms of creating organic content. Kevin, this one is for you.
What type of models do I, sorry, just to make sure I understand the question right, is the question, what type of LLMs should you use to create content?
I think it's more akin to, what's Google looking at in terms of, the content being like created, what's going to affect from a content perspective, your ability to show up in Google search, AI overviews, and Gemini.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, right, there has to be the relevance to the query. That's super important. So are you actually writing about the thing or not? And then from there's a whole bunch of assumptions. It does seem like Google, or at least AI overviews, have a specific expectation for subtopics to be covered, and you can identify subtopics in the citations. So whenever you have a new citation, or basically said below the citation starts a new subtopic or a new kind of section, and they break these out in SGE, in the beta environment. You have this, I forgot what it's called, but a feature to essentially break the answer out into different sections. And so anyway, you probably want to optimize your content based on these sections, especially when the same sections cite the same type of pages. But again, in general, when it comes to outside of AI overviews, right, all these models, large footprint, make sure you allow these LLMs to crawl your site if you want to be included. That goes without saying, but it's not always guaranteed. And then just have a large footprint, be known on the web, be represented in lots of training data. I hope that gives an answer. I don't think there's a perfect playbook yet, or like a 1, 2, 3 step thing. But I think these abstract steps is what we can agree on.
Awesome. I have a question here for Cyrus. I have a client for whom we have gotten 45 featured snippets. All the keywords have high search volumes, good cost per clicks, yet we have seen zero impact on traffic and conversions. What is best in this new world where we have featured snippets, we have AI overview citations, and we have the traditional #1 ranking on Google? Where do you actually want to be? And what are your thoughts surrounding getting more click-through rate out of the content you're producing?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I would want to look at the data in that specific case and understand the keyword volume. I don't know the answer. I mean, a year ago I would have said, hey, let's get some more catchy titles in there. But I think we've seen with helpful content update, Google has turned the screws on clickbait a little bit. That the titles now are really boring. I had a huge point I wanted to make. I want to go back to an earlier question about, where do you want to be? I think there is some optimism, and I want to leave this webinar with a little bit of optimism, and that had to do about ads. With Google incorporating ads into AI overviews. In some senses, that is actually good news for organic publishers, because we know that Google wants people to click on ads, and they want the ads to look like organic results. They're not labeled very clearly. And so Google wants people to be clicking on organic results because they want them to think those ads are sometimes organic results, and they're clicking on them. So it's in Google's best interest to keep people clicking in those search results because that's going to make advertisers happy. And so if you're an organic publisher, I think there is some room for optimism in this whole conversation. And where do you want to be? You want to be everywhere because we don't know exactly yet where you should be. So be everywhere, everything, all at once. Thank you.
One more rapid fire, and then we'll go into.
Oh God, I hope we are done. I saved all my best one for that answer.
We'll go into final concluding remarks. And this one has to do with Google. Does Google now count as a publisher? And will they be held liable like a new site? They've been able to dodge a lot of privacy concerns, litigation cases, because they have, at least in the past, been classified as not a publisher. I'm going to ask this one to Lily. What are your thoughts here?
I think as long as they have AI overviews, yes. It's a brand new piece of content. Obviously, it uses other people's content, but the whole point is that it's different than featured snippets. So in my opinion, yes. California seems to think so, almost, It's like starting to get into dangerous territory, but I don't see how they can not be if they're creating a net new piece of information.
Awesome. All right. Well, to wrap it all up, and again, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. I know the times are very crazy these days, and everybody wants to learn from the best and the brightest. So I'm going to conclude by asking each of you to share 1 to 2 tips in the next 6 months. What are your important takeaways that you want people to do, change in their approach for SEO content to hopefully set them up for this best likelihood of success? Cyrus, you're up.
Keep publishing content. Publish new content. Keep doing all the things you're doing. I think we're going to learn a lot, but when I look at sites that are going down right now, and I spoke about this earlier, most of them are doing SEO very, very, very well. They have better internal links. They have more structured data. Their content is longer, with all the perfect headings. And I don't think we need to worry about that as much in the future because I think Google may be actually using some of these things as negative ranking signals. So just publish your content. Don't sweat the details. Make it good. If you create something so good that they can't ignore you, Google may have to rank you. Not necessarily, but maybe. So keep doing what we're doing and don't give up.
I think less is more, to Cyrus's point, like we were in a bit of a golden age with, being able to basically take advantage of Google's algorithms. Not we, all of us, but a lot of companies and people doing SEO found exploits and found opportunities that Google's cracked down on. So we're in a different playing field now. Doesn't mean SEO is dead. I really don't think that. I've never said that. It's just harder. And, to Cyrus's point, if you spend all the time you spent trying to build 5,000 pages programmatically that don't add a lot of value, building 10 pages that are extremely valuable and take a really, really long time to build and maintain, you'll probably see a lot more SEO success in the future. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I want to add to all these. Obviously, don't disagree at all with anything here. What I want to add is the one thing that I would change in the next 6 months is I would invest more in telemetry. So how can I monitor and better understand what is happening in the search results? And this is not new. I've been pounding the drum on that for years in the times of rich snippets, and now in AI overviews. I think that's just even more important. Just start with an understanding of what's happening, and most companies just do not have that. Start with understanding when does Google show what the impact is on your traffic, on your click-through rates, and then do all the things that Cyrus and Lily have said.
Awesome. You heard it. Focus on continuing to produce content. Don't fret. SEO is not dying and dead. It's just changing. And quality over quantity. There you have it. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This has been a fantastic discussion. I took away a ton of learnings myself on everything that's going on. And make sure to follow our wonderful panelists on socials. Amanda has posted them in the chat, and they are there They are constantly sharing the latest, the greatest on what's going on in SEO these days, mainly lots of Goog enoughs, but you know, sometimes you need some light-hearted humor to brighten your day. They got you. Thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, see y'all.